All right. Hello and good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us on another Colorado LTAP Tuesday Tailgate Talk. Sue Baillargeon and I are going to be talking to you today about mental health and wellness. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass things off to Sue, who's going to kick us off.
Okay, everyone. I don't know why that didn't change slides. There we go. Welcome back to Colorado LTAP Safety Talk. Today we're going to be talking about, like Cody said, our mental health and wellness. And we are talking about it today because, well, first of all, Cody and I are going to give you information that will help you become aware of the stress you may be under and steps to take so that you can live a little bit healthier.
And just wanted to plug in real quick here. For those of you who don't know who I am, obviously Sue's been running these tailgate talks, and you haven't seen me much besides the quick introduction. Um, I'm the training coordinator for Colorado LTAP. Sue and I decided to work together on this um, tailgate talk and share with all of you, both of our experiences.
So, those of us who are in this industry who perform these stressful jobs under some of the most stressful conditions you can imagine, we're often unaware of the stress that we are under. We become so used to working in an environment where we're watching our back, we're watching someone else's back for every move that we make, that we don't even consider that the stress is causing us to behave in ways we wouldn't normally.
All right. So let's kick off and talk about why is mental health relevant? Why is it important? And first off, what even is mental health? How are we defining this, right? So mental health, in our eyes and in the research that we've done, is a state of successful performance of mental function, resulting in productive activities, fulfilling relationships with other people, and the ability to adapt to change and to cope with challenges. It's really essential to personal well-being, for family and interpersonal relationships, and the ability to contribute to community or society, right? It affects how we think, how we feel, how we act, and it determines how we handle the stress that life throws at us, how we relate to others in our relationships, and how we make choices. So it impacts every aspect of our life, and having a positive mental health allows people to realize their full potential, cope with the stresses of life, work productively, make meaningful connections and contributions, right? So, all the things that we want to see out of life, want to live a meaningful life, comes down to mental health. And when we don't have our mental health in check, it can be really detrimental. And we know that as a society, we're struggling a lot right now with mental health, right? 18.1% of adults in the US deal with mental health conditions in any given year. Suicide rates shift upward when mental health is neglected, and it's the 10th leading cause of death overall in the United States. And we also know that men in particular struggle with mental health more, right? So men are 3.7 times more likely than women to commit suicide. There are 6 million men that are affected by depression every year. Men report lower levels of life satisfaction, more likely to die due to alcohol-related causes and to misuse drugs compared to women. Men with mental illnesses are also less likely to receive mental health treatment, and that tends to be one of the primary drivers behind all these mental health issues. And part of the reason why we struggle so much is because we keep everything bottled up inside, right? There's a stigma when it comes to men and mental health. So men are often expected to be, the breadwinners, to be strong, dominant, control. And while these aren't inherently bad things, they can make it harder for men to reach out for help and open up, right? There's a social stigma where, your friends, your family, there's kind of these negative attitudes toward people experiencing mental health illnesses, and kind of rooted in the misperception that symptoms of mental illness are based on a person having a weak character. And these perceptions can lead to discrimination, avoidance, rejection of people who are experiencing these mental health issues. And sometimes we can internalize that. There's kind of this self stigma where you really take on that social stigma and believe it to be true. And that can cause some further suffering if you are experiencing some mental health issues. And then there's also some cultural things. I won't go into any specifics, but there are certain communities that have these beliefs about mental health and what it means to be a man and how those two intersect. So, we won't talk about any specific stigmas in this, but I want you all to reflect on your own experience. Do you feel any stigma in your own life that prevents you from opening up to what you're feeling? Where's that coming from? Is it coming from your friends, coming from your family, your parents, your dad? And what can you do to break that stigma for yourself, but also for others, right? How can we create a positive environment for others so they don't feel that social stigma coming from us? All right, so before we start talking about toxic masculinity, I want to clarify some misconceptions on what this is and what this is not. I think it's become kind of like a more polarized issue, and that's not what we're trying to do. It's not saying that men in general are toxic, right? I'm a guy. I think being a guy is awesome. And I think our society needs men and masculinity, and especially now more than ever, right? But how I see this, right, you can represent and demonstrate masculinity in different ways. And we need, in my opinion, healthy masculinity, right? We need men who cultivate leadership, courage, etc. How I define leadership, or so how I define masculinity and healthy masculinity, is when you have men who strive to be the best versions of themselves, who have their values and to stick to those values and to hold themselves and others accountable to those values. And I think of toxic masculinity as the manifestation of these unhealthy kind of social norms that we adhere to, primarily being, men can't show emotion, stop crying, being a man. And sometimes that can lead to, right, worsening the depression and anxiety, abuse of substances, greater health risk, um, issues with intimacy, issues with interpersonal violence, discouragement and seeking help. All of these things um, kind of manifest when we don't deal with mental health as men.
So there are actual physical effects of stress, and these are some of the things you can, look for here. There's fainting, poor digestion, acne, headaches, poor diet, decreased libido, appetite changes, different muscle tensions. Um, and you might think, I think intuitively, you might think these are psychological effects of stress, but they're not. They're none of this is psychology, it's biology. So if you're experiencing any of these symptoms, it's not because there's something wrong with your mind. It's the biological effects of the hormones and enzymes that are released in your brain as a result of what's happening around you and in your life, right? It's the physical effects of all the stimuli around you. Um, it can cause you to respond to emotional triggers that may cause fainting. Things that normally wouldn't get a response from you may trigger a strong or a really abnormal emotional response. Fatigue from stress can also cause fainting. So I remember my first winter in a truck. I got out at a gas station. I was in the truck for like 3 or 4 days, and I got out at a gas station to get a coffee. And I don't even remember actually sliding down underneath the truck. Um, but I do remember coming to and finding the people all around me and seeing how confused they were as how did I get under there, right? I just fainted and slid right under. Um, and they couldn't figure out, they were looking at me. I wasn't injured or anything, but how did I get there? Really more confused when they realized I was the actual driver of the truck and there I was laying underneath it. They were all scratching their head at that. Funny story, but it's a serious effect. Can you imagine if I had fainted while I was, doing 25, 30 miles an hour in a snowstorm, and crossed the lane and hit somebody coming the other way? I mean, it could have had serious effects. So that's just one thing. Adrenaline release during a stress event can cause ulcers or other negative digestive concerns. When you're stressed, there's an enzyme, the big one that's released into your brain, one of the big ones that causes all these effects. It's called cortisol, and it causes your body to go into a fight or flight mode. The continuous wash of this cortisol through your brain is really continued stress, causes a variety of symptoms like suppressed immune system or acne or skin outbreaks, things that you wouldn't normally think that stress could cause, but this is why. Headaches due to the stiff neck muscles, right? If you're constantly, tense and all, pulled together, teeth grinding symptoms. These are all things, symptoms of stress. Sitting or being in the same position for long periods of time causes those stiff neck muscles. And you might not even be aware of the teeth grinding, but they can both cause headaches or even serious migraines. One of the most difficult things to do in this industry is maintain a balanced diet, right, with the work that you guys do and the hours that you all keep. But it can ward off those headaches, and it can keep your blood sugar at the right balance, and it can keep you, help you stay in control of your stress. Cortisol will also affect the libido, which can cause changes in behavior. If this becomes chronic, it can cause, impact relationships and have really long lasting effects on your life. Um, Stress also may cause you to eat more or less. It's an important thing to be aware of changes, right? So that you can take steps to relieve your stress. Another effect that stress has on food is the perception of control. Some may begin to restrict or binge on food because having control over food might help soothe that anxiety a little bit. It helps you feel like you have more control, whether you eat more or less, doesn't matter. You're in control. It can trigger eating disorders, so it's important to stay mindful and be aware of what's happening during these stressful times. It can cause rapid heartbeat. Cortisol and adrenaline are the culprits again. They are stimulants. Both enzymes are stimulants, and they'll cause your heart rate to increase, as well as your respirations to increase. Know your coworkers and your habits. You might notice the signs of stress before they do. All the symptoms we listed a minute ago, they can all vary. Some can be very subtle, some can be really severe. But you may be the only ones who notice it, right? You're going to be the people spending the most time with each other. So know your partner, know your coworkers and what's normal for them. My snow partner always knew when it was time to drop me off for a rest break. And they would never wait any longer than possible, to drop me off. And they would leave me there as long as they possibly could. We were only allowed 3 hours, but, they just left me there. And I would do the same for them. 3 hour rest break is not enough after working, all those hours in a truck. But they would never have to ask me if I needed to go. They just knew. But sometimes it's okay to ask. If you notice things that aren't quite right, if you notice behaviors that are just a little bit outside of normal, ask if they're okay. Ask if there's anything you can do to help relieve their stress. Small things you can do, like let them have a longer rest, might just be all it takes. You can't always fix the problem, but you can always listen to them, and sometimes that's enough.
Yeah, so what I think Sue is saying is so important, and making sure we develop that culture of taking care of each other. And just as equally important is taking care of yourself, right? So self-care is kind of a term tossed around pretty frequently. It's really any positive habits that you use to recharge, handle stress, prepare for the next challenge. Um, in work, in life, everything you do takes its toll on you. And a common saying is you can't pour from an empty cup. Self-care is the way you can refill your cup so you can continue to live each day to the fullest. So what does that look like? Well, it's different for everybody. Everybody has their own unique way of how they recharge, how they want to rest and recover from the day. And we all have our own preferences and needs. And it's important to recognize how you take care of yourself to feel your best. And here are some examples of how you can practice self-care, but by no means are they exhaustive, right? So you can get professional help if you need it, right? Seek a counselor, seek a therapist. You can connect with others, go out, hang with your friends, throw the frisbee around. You can stay positive. practice gratitude, things like that. You can get physically active. I personally love running. I love working out. That's a great way for me to practice self-care. You can help others, and whatever that looks like to you. And getting enough sleep, right? Making sure that you're getting that rest each day um, to be able to better prepare for the next day. So, kind of synonymous with self care is healthy coping skills, and that's really what this is. But as we've kind of hinted at through this presentation, we can also have unhealthy coping skills, right? So let's kind of talk about that distinction between healthy coping skills and unhealthy coping skills, right? So healthy coping skills are all the ones we just talked about, right? Your positive habits, working out, sleep, your hobbies even, right? Fishing, hunting, working on an old car, whatever that looks like to you, that can be a way of healthy coping skills. Talking through things, all of those things are good. And some unhealthy coping skills that we've hinted at, right? Drugs, alcohol, addictive behaviors, gambling, avoidance of your issues, worrying, overthinking things, and we're not here to tell you that, you can't ever drink a beer or you can't ever go to a casino and have fun. The important point is to recognize that when you're using those as a way to cope with your problems, that's when it becomes unhealthy, right? Because you're not actually dealing with your problems. You're not actually setting yourself up with that foundation to be able to handle those problems better, right? But what we talked about at the first slide, mental health is really being able in a positive mind state to help deal with the challenges and the stresses of life. And yeah, those unhealthy coping skills might help in the short term, but you're really not building up that foundation to be able to handle the stresses that life throws at you. You're really just avoiding them.
All those things Cody mentioned earlier are really great tools to take your mind off stress, as well as, the physical activity that he talked about, hobbies. Another one is volunteering. Nothing makes you feel better, and forget about your own stuff than helping someone else. I spent over 20 years doing disaster relief services as a volunteer for American Red Cross locally, far away, all over the country. It was the best stress reliever ever. Um, there's just nothing better than helping someone else out when they need it the most, to take your mind off whatever's bothering you. But it's not a permanent solution, so you still need to figure out other ways. Um, Most public works and state agencies have employee assistance programs that can provide free access to licensed mental health professionals. They can provide services to you, your family. Sometimes they can even extend that out to friends or other people in your life who are experiencing stress and causing it to affect you. Um, it's an invaluable service. It's completely confidential. It's usually free, at least in the beginning. It's always free, and it can be the difference between happiness and unhappiness and unnecessary suffering. A couple of the places you can go for online therapy. Um, some of these are free, some of them are not, and some of them will take insurance. Some of them, you might have to pay for, but Talkspace.com is a good one. Therapypro.com, and from the Department of um, Substance Abuse and Mental Health, um, they have a great national helpline with services to provide mental health help. And the last one, talk to each other, right? Be your own best resource um, at work. And even more than that, be a listener, right? Listen to each other. Sometimes it's just having someone around to unload on, right? And then you can just let it all go because it's not your stress. But be a listener. Talk to your coworkers, get to know them, and find out what's happening in their life that is causing them stress. All right, some key points to remember from today. Mental health can lead to other health problems or suicide. It is very prevalent in men and seems getting to solutions seems to be more difficult for men. because of the stigmas that prevent people from getting help. All those traditional ideas about masculinity that will keep a man from seeking help. There are noticeable symptoms of stress, though. Almost anything out of the ordinary behavior-wise is a symptom of stress. And noticing them and being able to direct people to help, or just having an awareness that they're happening. Some of the things you can do: be active, use healthy distractions, or seek professional help through your employee assistance program or through some of those online help services.
Yeah, so before we talk about references, I just wanted to piggyback off what Sue was saying in those key points. I think for me, the big takeaways from this meeting is find a way for you to take care of yourself, whatever that looks like. This is a journey, it's a process of figuring that out. Really be intentional and aware of how you refill your cup. As Sue was saying, take care of the people around you too, right? Be in tune to maybe mood changes, things like that, and be willing to be a good friend and listen to them when they are struggling. And then the last thing is, if you need it, seek help, right? There's no shame in that, and that's going to be how you get the best care in that time of need. But yeah, so references. Sue and I aren't mental health professionals by any means, so we did want to acknowledge that and just let you all know, this isn't just us spitballing. These are all references that we've looked up from reputable sources, from government sites, from research studies, NIH, things like that. So if you want to check out any of these references, feel free to email us. We'll happily send those your way. But yeah, with that, I will pass things off to Sue to wrap us up. Take us home, Sue.
All right, so I got the information for this tailgate talk today from the National Institute of Health, www.nih.gov, and from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health .gov website. So that's where I got the information. But thank you all for coming today to participate in the LTAP Safety Talk. I hope you found the mental health safety topic helpful and that you're able to incorporate some of this into your daily routine. I usually like to leave this by talking about how we don't do safety talks because something might happen. We do them because things already have. And in the case of mental health, I think it's important to remember that all of us can be healthy, mentally healthy, right? Up until the very second that we're not. And we might find ourselves at that moment and have no place to turn. And hopefully you'll find these resources helpful if you ever get to that point. So thank you for coming, and we'll see you next time.